Hi everyone, this is the guide for Mythic Krosus. The strategy and playstyle will be exactly the same for both Heroic and Normal as the tank abilities do not change. Mythic Krosus is the first fight in Nighthold where our DPS actually matters. The enrage timer for the first kill is extremely tight, and any DPS the tanks can pull out is a huge bonus. We had quite a few enrage wipes when Krosus was at 30 million HP. With that being said, Demon Hunters have to sacrifice survivability to reach the upper limits of our DPS potential. Whatever you are capable of doing is completely dependent on your healer's capability. This fight must be 3 healed with the current gear level. I want to go over a couple setups and viable builds for the fight. For talents in the tier 99, the mandatory talent is Razor Spikes. This will give you 30% increased physical damage whenever Demon Spikes is active. Since the majority of our damage is going to be Fracture, which is physical damage, this talent is absolutely mandatory. For tier 100 is Burning Alive. Honestly, any talent in this tier is fine, but I take Burning Alive just because it gives you a small dot when casting Fiery Brand. It does not much, but when you're trying to inch out as much damage as possible, it helps. Tier 102 is Fell Eruption. This is the superior single target DPS talent. You want to use it on cooldown and right after Fiery Brand to trigger the Fire Demise bonus for every other cast. Tier 104 is Fracture. This is absolutely mandatory. Almost all your damage, or at least the majority of your damage, will be from Fracture. You have to use it. Tier 106 is Concentrated Sigils. This is a small DPS boost over Quicken Sigils. In the video, I use Quicken Sigils because I forgot to switch to Concentrated. Tier 108 is the talents is between Fell Devastation and Spirit Bomb. If you need survival, Spirit Bomb is a way to go. The amount of sustain it gives you from the 20% healing from all the damage you do is quite large. This is great for consistent healing to help your healers out. Now, if your healers are doing fantastic and you don't need to use it, Fell Devastation is the better of the two talents for DPS. When I compared my logs using Spirit Bomb with other people's logs using Fell Devastation, there's about a 3 million damage difference over the course of the 6-minute fight. So if you're able to, use Fell Devastation. If you need the healing, use Spirit Bomb. For tier 110, you will almost always want to use Soul Barrier. Soul Barrier should be used when the other tank taunts and you have 5 stacks of Syrian Brand. While doing this, you should be strafing left and right and picking up as many soul fragments as possible to keep buffing the shield. If you do this properly throughout the fight, Soul Barrier should be your highest healing by the end of the fight. The other talent that you could take is Demonic Infusion. This gives you Demon Spikes and recharges your Demon Spikes to 2 charges while giving you 60 pain. This is the superior DPS increase due to Razor Spikes. Now, this is very risky. I've never used it. I've not seen a log where a Demon Hunter has used it because this Soul Barrier gives you way too much absorb. However, if you're able to do it, you have God Healers who can keep you alive. Demonic Infusion will give you a higher DPS. A couple side notes. You will not be using Soul Cleave very often. It should only be used when you're afraid you may die. On most Krosus kills, I use it about 10 to 12 times per the 6-minute fight. Most of the healing is from Orb Collection. Empower Ward should be used on cooldown whenever you have a stack of Syrian Brand. This is to maximize the uptime of Siphon Power, which will give you a huge DPS increase. Now, if you find that you're almost always dying, you might want to save your Empower Wards to when you have 5 stacks of Syrian Brand, but it will cost you a lot of damage. For gear, you would run your normal gear setup besides a couple small changes. First is you would no longer use Dark Moon card. The majority of damage you take from Krosus is magic damage. Dark Moon card only gives you physical damage reduction. This is not a good trinket for Krosus, so instead you want to replace it with a high DPS trinket. So depending on what you have. I personally use a Bloodthirsty Instinct. I also use Archimonde's Hatred Reborn. Now before I got this trinket, I used the Ethereal Urn from Nightbane. But basically you want to use any high DPS trinkets you might have. For legendaries, the top 3 legendaries will be Pridus, strictly for the stats, and for the extra shield every 30 seconds. The other good trinket is Archimonde's Hatred Reborn, which I just mentioned. The agility, versatility, and mastery is great for damage and survivability. But the on use, where you gain a absorb shield for 30% of your maximum health for 10 seconds. And then you deal damage back to the attacker for 75% of the damage absorbed. This is on a 1 minute and 15 second cooldown. This trinket is amazing. The on use alone does, or at least for my last kill, did over 7 million damage by itself. If you have this trinket, this is fantastic. And the third legendary is the Cloak of Fell Flame. This reduces the magic damage you receive when Immolation Aura is active by 15%. Since the majority of the damage is magic damage, this is great for mitigating a lot of the damage. If you don't have any of these 3, then you're stuck using whatever RNG gave you. For consumables, I use an Agility Flask and Potion of Old War for damage. For food, you can go with the Versatility Food, which is Seed Battered Fish Plate. And then for my last kill in this video, I was trying out the Fish Gruel Special. This will do 17,000 fire damage every so many procs. Over the course of the 6-minute fight, it did roughly 1.6 million damage. I don't know if it's worth it, but any damage you can pull out on the boss, the better. One last note, I recommend downloading and using the Omen Threat Meter add-on. We have a huge issue of pulling threat off of other tanks. It is better to know where you stand on the threat table, because if you pull threat and eat more stacks of Syrian Brand, you will die unless the healers blow all their externals to keep you alive. Since Syrian Brand does so much damage, you will almost have, in a quote, almost have infinite pain when you're off tanking. So all you do is you spam Fractured non-stop. So your damage goes through the roof, damage equals threat, and I have pulled threat off of many tanks and died because of it. So Omen Threat Meter is huge to let you know where you stand on those meters. Alright, let's take a look at the video. Alright, so I'm going to show you the best pull rotation to maximize your damage on the pull. I'm going to go over the general rotation of this fight. The good thing is this fight just repeats throughout every phase. So once we go over the initial rotation, I'm not going to go over it too much more unless something changes. So to start the pull is, if you use Quicken Sigils, you need to precast your Flame Sigil at 2 seconds. And then you pop a Potion of Old War, and then you cast Infernal Slam and fly through the air at the 1 second mark, so you land on the boss on the pull. Once you land, you want to open up with Fiery Brand, which will open the Fiery Demise window, followed by an Immolation Aura to start the pain incoming, then a Soul Carver to start pulling out the soul fragments. At this point, you should have at least 10 pain to open up with a Fell Eruption. And then you should have at least 1 fragment to cast Spirit Bomb. At this point, your Fiery Demise window should be closing, and you're going to start the normal rotation. Now, if you have a choice, you should be the person that pulls the boss and tanks first. The quicker you get the Syrian Brand, the quicker your damage will spike, and the more damage you would do over the course of the fight. Let's go ahead and watch the pull. So Fiery Brand, to Immolate, to Soul Carver. Now at this point, the opening rotation is done. I have 2 stacks of the Syrian Brand. I popped the Archimonde's Trinket right away, so I can trigger that and get that off cooldown as quick as possible to increase my damage output. Now, what you should do at this point is also cast your Empowered Wards. That way you can use this as many times as possible. I delayed it. Just a heads up, I am the raid leader, so I do a lot of calls and I watch a lot of people, so I miss a couple timers. I need to up my Empowered Wards. So let's go ahead and watch it. So one key part here is I am strafing left and right to pick up as many of these soul fragments as possible. Most of your healing is going to be from soul fragments and soul barrier. Just keep dodging Fell Beam and keep strafing. When the tank taunts, you pop soul barrier. At this point, soul barrier is going to be a lot of your absorbs. So once you use it, you want to keep strafing and you want to keep picking up as many soul fragments as possible. When you cast Slam, as he's starting to now, you want to have Demon Spikes up. Or if you procced Meta, that's fine as well. Or to have Fiery Brand. All those are fine. Otherwise, you're just using everything off cooldown. Immolation Aura, Fell Eruption. Try to keep up Demon Spikes as much as possible. Just keep fracturing and strafing. Now, the guild strat here is there is to be no melee anywhere near the boss and the first 3 bridges. As you can see here is the Druid Bear tank has these pitches on the left, I have this pitch on the right, and there's no melee anywhere. This is how it should be done. Everybody should be absorbing from back to front, whereas only the 2 tanks absorbs in the front. Now, if you are going to absorb 2 to 3 pitches, you might want to think about using some sort of cooldown if you have a lot of stacks of Searing Brand. So we lucked out, there was no ads in the front. So it was strafing and fracturing. As you can see, the Omen threat meter is there, and it's good to keep an eye on. Now, right here, I just used Inferno Slam, and now I have no stacks going into the bridge break. I know since I have a Bear Druid, he's going to give me the speed buff, and that's all I need to get out without dying. If you don't have a Druid that's going to give you a speed buff, or maybe even a Shaman Totem, you might want to save your last Inferno Slam to jump out so you don't die. Now, when the bridge breaks, at these moments, you are more likely to die. So make sure you keep your meta ready, just in case you're about ready to fall during the bridge breaks. Meta you should only use as a cooldown if you're going to die, or you think you're going to die, then use it. There's no other part of the fight that is necessary. I missed my, there it is, my Empowered Wards. Alright, so now, these adds here. The Fell Burst does a ton of AoE damage. If there are any adds near you, it is a good practice to switch and interrupt them. Any damage you can prevent going to the raid, less likely you're going to lose people, less likely it's going to be a wipe. If you're able to target to them and interrupt them, or use Arcane Torrent if you're a Blood Elf, or your Sigil of Silence, all of those are good options to help your group keep all the ads interrupted. I just used an Arcane Torrent when I could have just switched to it. There I just used meta because I was dropping really low. It's just a cooldown to make sure you stay alive. Otherwise, use everything on cooldown, strafe and pick up orbs or fragments. I should cast Demon Spikes there, but I kept 2 charges for way too long. Bridge is gonna break. Make sure you don't run out too early, because the other tank can get nailed if you run out too early, if you're the main tank at that moment. That's why I stopped to turn around. That way I didn't outrange the other tank. At this point, there's always double beams on the 3rd and 4th bridges, so make sure you don't get hit by both beams. Fracture and strafe, fracture and strafe. Let's run around and make sure you get as many interrupted as possible with Arcane Torrent. Yeah, I just missed my Fiery Demise window for Fell Eruption there. That was a mistake. If you have the option of recording yourself play, I'd highly recommend doing it. Because when you watch yourself, you see all these little nuances that you can improve on. Alright, so the last thing that you need to take note on is right here. What we do is we have everybody group up in the front left. So when the orb goes out, it goes to the back right to minimize as much damage as possible. But seeing as I'm on the right side, I'm on the opposite side for Slam, I know Slam is coming next, I have to cheat halfway across the bridge. I'll be taking more orb damage, but I can get to the Slam quick enough that I don't miss it. There's been once or twice where I tried to group up and I was not quick enough to get there and wipe the raid. So as you notice here, I'm going to cheat away from the group just to make sure I do not miss that Slam. If you miss that Slam, it's a guaranteed wipe. Here, with all the pitches, this is another good time to use Arcane Torrent if you have it, or Sigil of Silence to help to keep everything interrupted. Everybody should be using AoE stuns, silences, everything you can use to stop the Fell Burst. Let's drop my Sigil, interrupt, or silence as many as possible. Here's the orb and where I start to cheat across the platform. And this is it, guys. There's nothing else to this fight. And that's it. So even after missing a couple cooldowns like Empowered Wards, I didn't use that at the right time, and I lost probably about 10 to 15% uptime of Siphon Power and all these other little nuances that I now see that I need to fix for next attempt. This attempt here, doing this strategy I showed you, I still parsed in the 90 percentile for damage and the 92 percentile for healing. I'll post some screenshots of that in the comments below. Otherwise, if you have any questions or if you like the video, please thumbs up, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Thank you.